Okay, we're almost done. We're going to conclude this module with a few ratios. We're going to talk about the acid test ratio. This is similar to the current ratio that we learned in the last module. The acid test ratio, however, takes out the more longer term current assets, if we could say it that way. So we're going to test the really quick assets, which are cash, our short-term investments, and our current receivables. So the logic behind this is that inventory and prepaid expenses may take a little bit longer to convert to cash. So we want to see what those quick assets, our cash, the short-term investments, and receivables, how quickly can we pay off our current liabilities with those? We normally want this to be about 1.0. If this number gets too high, it might indicate that we are not utilizing our cash resources to the best of our shareholders' interests. We might be better off investing in additional plant assets or other longer term investments. So there's kind of a fine line. We don't want it to be too high. However, we don't want it to be too low because we don't want to show that we are not able to pay our bills. So let's take a look. Here we've got the acid test ratio for Nike, and we compare it to an industry average with Under Armour, or compared to another company in the industry, I should say. We'll see the acid test ratio for Nike is current year 1.8. It's actually improving. So from 2 years ago, it was 1.5, 1 year ago, 1.6, current year 1.8. Their current ratio also improved from 2.5 to 2.8 to 2.9. Let's compare that to what's happening at Under Armour. Under Armour's acid test ratio slipped slightly below that 1.0 that we know measures the ability to repay our debts quickly. Their current ratio was fine, well within range. Does this indicate possibly that Nike might be holding too much cash? That's a consideration. They're at a little bit higher than their industry peer. They're double what their industry peer is, but they're not considerably high. So they might want to take a look at additional investments, additional things that they can do with their cash and short-term holdings. Next, we're going to take a look at the gross margin ratio. So gross margin is our net sales minus the cost of goods sold. So we're going to take that gross margin and divide it by net sales to arrive at the gross margin ratio. And what this ratio says is for every dollar of sales I sell, this much is available to cover the expenses and provide a profit. So if we look below, we see the gross margin of 15,312,000, net sales 34,350. So for every dollar sold, 44.6 cents goes toward covering expenses and generating profit. Let's take a look at our exercises. Let's go back to your practice set. In number 7, you're asked to compute the acid test ratio. To compute the acid test ratio, we're going to take I think I might want my order of operations here. I'm going to need to add cash plus accounts receivable. I don't include inventory or prepaid expenses. Those are the longer current assets. We just include the quick current assets. This is also commonly referred to as the quick current ratio. I'm going to divide that by my current liabilities, which are the accounts payable plus other liabilities. And I get a acid test ratio of 0.65. So what does this mean? Well, this means I don't quite have enough to pay my current bills with my quick assets. I'm below that 1.0 number. So maybe I need to be looking at some ways that I could improve my liquidity. The next problem asks you to compute the net sales and gross profit for the company below. So let's go ahead and compute our net sales, and we're just going to sum that. And once you've done it for one, you can just drag that across. So we've summed our net sales, and now we can also sum the gross profit that will subtract the cost of goods sold because it's entered as a negative. So that's why we're using the sum function here. If that wasn't entered as a negative, we would have to subtract cost of goods sold because that's a cost of our operations. To get the gross margin ratio, we're going to take that gross profit or gross margin and divide by the net sales. So the gross margin ratio for Carrier is 36.2 cents on the dollar. Will go toward covering expenses and generating profit. Lennox 37.4, Train 25.9, and York 49.4. So if these companies are all within the same industry, we certainly have a leader of the industry, we have an average, and we have a trailer. If you're the trailer, you want to figure out what you can do to get more to this average side. If you're in this average category, what can you be doing to move more toward this higher side? And that concludes this lesson and this module. So you should continue on to the homework and the exam.